Hello and welcome to the Virtual Mac YouTube channel. My name is Neil McLaughlin, aka Virtual Mac. On this channel, you're going to find the latest news about Azure Virtual Desktop, Windows 365, Intune, Entra ID, career advice, and much more. If that's the kind of content that you like, please subscribe to my channel where we will bring weekly updates. So in today's video, we're going to talk about something which I'm personally very passionate about. It's about security baselines. So security baselines is something which Microsoft had for a while. And it basically just gives you a kind of baseline footprint of what your security settings should be. Okay, so it doesn't cost anything to implement, totally free. And the reason why I decided to record this video today is because Microsoft recently updated their security baselines. So the latest version is actually what we call 24H1. And the previous to that, the last update that they did was in November 2021. So this is like the first update that they've done within 3 years. So if you want to ensure that you're running a default security level for your environment, then you definitely want to take a look at this. So today we're going to focus on the Windows 365 security baseline. We're going to show you how to create a policy. We're going to apply the policy to our Windows 365 desktops, and then we're just going to quickly check just to make sure that those policies have been applied properly. Looking forward to the video. Let's get going. So first of all, let's just have a quick look and see what settings are actually been applied by the baseline. So we've got some Microsoft documentation, which I'll put the link into below. And from that documentation, it basically lists out all the settings that have been implemented. Okay, so if you just go down and just have a quick look, these are some of the default settings which are configured, and then we can just go and basically check each one if you want to. Now, this may break some stuff in your environment depending on what applications you got running, depending on what websites you access, depending on what devices you interact with locally. So obviously we may need to tweak and adjust the security baseline, but this is a very good starting point, right? So if you can apply the security baseline and everything still works, great. Okay, you know you've increased your security, all is good, everything's still working. But as I mentioned, if things break, then we may need to tweak some settings to allow those sort of devices or websites or whatever work with the security baseline settings that we've got. So we can just go through here, we can have a quick look and check some things. So obviously we can say harden UNC paths enabled. I mean, there's literally hundreds of settings in here, so I'm not going to go through each one individually, but you get the general idea. So for example, BitLocker encryption, so it's basically saying we need to deny right access to fixed drives that are not protected by BitLocker, so it's forcing us to apply BitLocker. So these are the kind of things that it's going to sort of look at just to make sure that you're running the most secure configuration that you can be to stop malicious hackers or internal employees or something doing stuff which they shouldn't be doing. Okay, so again, if you just go to this URL, you can actually just go through and just have a look and see what settings are being sort of configured. And there's also a GitHub repo, which you can see here. So this lists out all the different settings that are in here as well. Okay, so that's another resource that you can use just to check what those settings are. Okay, so that's where to check them. So let's now actually go and see how we can actually configure this. So we're actually going to apply these settings by Intune. Right, so that is how the configuration settings are going to be applied onto the Windows 365 devices. So obviously, a big prerequisite is that your Windows 365 devices need to be managed by Intune, which I presume a majority of devices are. Okay, so let's head over to the Intune console and let's go and deploy this policy, and then we'll actually leave it. I don't know how long this is going to take actually. So we'll see how long it takes to apply that policy, and then we'll go and just double check a few settings just to make sure that they have applied. Okay, so I'm just going to switch over to the Intune console. Okay, so here I am in the Intune console, so we can see we're in the security baseline setting. Okay, so under the endpoint security tab, so we can see here we've got the Windows 365 security baseline. Okay, so there are a few other security baseline settings. So you've got one for Windows 10 or later, and that's for the operating system. You've got Defender for endpoint baseline. You've got security baseline for Microsoft Edge, and you've got Windows 365 security baseline, and now you've also got the Windows sort of M365 apps security baseline as well. So these are a good starting point, and just to make sure we're as secure as we can be. Okay, so for this demo today, we're basically just going to look at the Windows 365 security baseline. So I'm just going to click on that. I'm actually going to create a profile, right? So I'm going to create this profile. So it's pre-selected the Windows 365 security baseline. So we're going to click create. Okay, so the name. So we're going to call this virtual, too lazy, virtual Manc security Windows 365 security baseline. Okay, so Neil's Windows 365 security baseline. Okay, I'm going to click next. Configuration settings. So this is basically all the template settings that is implemented, right? So if we just take a quick look at one of these. So again, if you needed to fine tune it, you could go in here and just change some settings if you needed to, but we're going to leave this at the default and just make sure that we can still log on to our Windows 365 desktop after we've applied all these settings. Okay, so you go down here, you can see what all these settings are. Okay, so you can, as I say, if you want to, just have a look through these before you press the apply button. Obviously, if you're doing this in a production environment, you just want to apply this to a number of test devices first, just to make sure everything's working okay. And then once you've confirmed everything's okay, you can then roll it out to your production devices. Okay. All right. So I'm not gonna go through each one of these settings because there are a lot of them. I mean, just looking through these settings as well. I mean, this says Windows 365, but I guess you could also apply these onto your Azure Virtual Desktop devices. A lot of these settings seem to be pretty generic, I would say. So yeah, maybe we could do that in a future video and just see what the effect of that would be. Okay, so here we can see like Windows PowerShell, turn on PowerShell script block locking, enabled, sign in, last locking to actually use automatic restart, disabled. So yeah, just general security settings, and as you can see, there's like so many of these settings. Okay, all right, so I'm just going to click next. Scope tags. So if you wanted to set a tag on these, you could do. So we're not going to do that here. Assignments. So what I've actually done is I've already pre-created a security group for this. All right. So I've actually created a dynamic security group, which is going to look at all my devices beginning with the name CPC, and then it will actually add those devices into that security group. Right. So obviously you could either do that or you could do it by default, like all devices, which I wouldn't recommend, or you could create a separate group which you manually manage yourself. Again, that's not a really good way of doing it. So I'd say if you're in full on production, the best way will probably be to be a dynamic group, and then you know those devices are automatically going to get added to it when they're created. Okay, so we're going to go to add group. So I'm going to select my group. I've called this cloud PC devices. So this is my group. Okay, so I'm going to select this. Okay, so you can see that's picked up 7 devices. So these are all my cloud PC devices that I've got in my environment. So I'm going to select next. We can also put, so you can just go back there. No, 1 second. You can also put exclusions in there as well, right? So if you wanted to exclude, like, I don't know, admin devices or something, you could put those in there as well. Okay, all right, so let's click on next. So basically we're just confirming here. So these are all the settings which are going to be enabled, right? So we can go here, say just double check some settings that we put in there, and then we just basically click on the create button. Okay, so click create. So that's actually gone and created that policy, right? So we can see here the last modified time was today's date at 9:12 in the morning, right? So that's my profile, which is now being created. So what we're going to do now is we're going to wait a while. I'll probably wait like 30 minutes or so, and then we'll actually just go and check to see whether those settings have actually been applied onto my Windows 365 desktop. Okay, so I'll see you back here shortly. Okay, so quick update. I just waited like 5-10 minutes and generated a report. So you can see here on the screen, it's basically saying the assignment status is pending, right? So we need to wait and see how long that's actually going to take to apply those settings. All right, so I'll be back when it's completed, and as I mentioned before, we'll go on and check to see whether those settings have actually been implemented. We're back. It's been around 10 minutes and the policy is actually applied, which is much quicker than I thought, to be honest with you. I've heard of quite a few bad stories about the time it takes for Intune to apply policy settings, but this one seemed to take around 15 minutes to apply, which is pretty good. So let's actually go and have a look at the report and see what that's telling us. All right, so basically when you go into the security baseline, you can run a report which will show you how many devices is applied to, right, and the success code, right? So here we've got a conflict, so there's some like other policy settings which I've got which are conflicting with it, but let's actually go and have a look and see what's actually going on here. So if I just click on my device in here, so you can see here, these are all the settings that is actually implemented. So you can see here, there's 285 items. So that's 285 individual device configuration settings which have been applied to that device to lock it down a lot further, right? So that's pretty good. So you can see here, devices succeeded. Some of them we've got not applicable. We just scroll down a bit, you can see all the different settings which you've got within here, okay? So yeah, we've got some conflicts here. So if I just click on this source profile conflict, yeah, I'm not too sure what that's about, but okay, all right. So basically what we're going to do now is we're actually going to log on to the desktop and just obviously make sure that we can actually log on to it. So let's go and launch my remote desktop client. So this is my Cloud PC device that I've got. So I'm just going to click here. So initiating remote connection, and that should log me straight in. Fingers crossed it's still going to work and we're not completely broken it. There you go. So we are logged in. Okay, so I'm just going to give it a reboot as well, just to make sure that everything is okay, because sometimes policy settings do need a reboot to apply fully. So just going to go here and then just click restart. Okay, yep, and then we'll restart. Then what we'll do is when we come back and log on, we'll just check one or two settings just to make sure those settings have actually applied. Okay, and we are back again. So what we're going to do now is just log on to the workstation and just double check that those policies have been applied. Okay, so now we're logged on. So what I've actually done, I ran a tool which can actually check all the log files, right? So it's called the MDM Diagnostics tool.exe, and I told it to output to the C temp directory. So in here, it's basically created me a report which I can run, right? And that's basically showing me the policy settings which have been configured, right? So you can see here, let me just go down a bit, all the managed policy settings. So these are the settings that we've applied from the security baselines. So you can see here there's lots of these settings which have been implemented, and we can also see in the event log as well. So if I just go into the event view and just have a look and see when we actually applied these settings, we can see these settings been applied in this device management diagnostic provider as well. Okay, so that's just us verifying that it's actually working and it's actually applying those settings, which all seem to be working perfectly fine. Okay, so you can see here these settings which have been applied and configured. Okay, so that's just us checking and verifying that everything's good to go. All right, and that brings us to the end of this video. I hope you found it useful. So as I mentioned, security always comes first. So to have a good security baseline is definitely a good starting point. Now, I wouldn't say this should be your end solution, right? This should be your starting point. Okay, so there are more advanced policies out there, like the CIS policies, for example, where your security team may want to lock down things even further. But as a kind of minimum security baseline, this is a good place to start off with. So it's better than applying nothing. It only takes a few minutes worth of work, and as I mentioned previously, just make sure that you test these settings against your environment, making sure that you're not breaking anything. Okay, so that's it from me this week. I hope to see you in another video next week. Thank you, goodbye.